Yo, how's everybody doing today? I hope you guys are all good. So, as you might know, Power of the Elements is officially legal for tournament play, meaning we've got some crazy new archetypes, new support for old archetypes, and a very crazy staple card that I'll be talking about today called Ultimate Slayer. Now, in case you don't know what this card already does, I'm gonna fill you in real quick. First of all, your opponent cannot activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. Isn't that just everybody's favorite flavor text right now? And the card gets even crazier. The effect says, send one monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, then target one monster your opponent controls with the same card type. So that can be Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum, or Link, and then shuffle it into the deck. So let me get this straight. Your opponent can't respond with monster effects. You get to send an extra deck card for cost. And you get to shuffle a card back into the deck. That's crazy. What? Alright, now I'm sure off the top of your head, you guys can maybe name 3, 4, maybe... I'll give you 5. You guys can probably name 5 cards that may be good targets to send, but in this video, I've got 15 for you. 15 targets. That's a whole ass extra deck right there. If you want, feel free to challenge yourself down in the comments below. See if you can guess all 15 of the targets. If you do get them right, I'll be hella impressed because I'm almost like 100% sure there has to be like at least 1 or 2 cards in here that most people aren't aware of. Alright guys, let us start off with the link targets. And by the way guys, there's no great pendulum targets, so there will be no pendulum cards in this list. It is just going to be Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, and Link monsters. So for the first card, we've got Tri-Brigade Farragut, and I'm going to pop up the entire effect text of the cards on the screen for you guys so you can read the whole card if you want to, but I will just be highlighting the graveyard effect and going over the graveyard effect because that's truly what is important here, right? So if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can draw 1 card, then place 1 card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. Basically, you get to mulligan, perhaps put back a brick like Sci-Frame Driver. I used to play Tri-Brigade quite a bit when it first came out, and I cannot emphasize the amount of times that my draw off of Farragut was absolutely insane. Moving on, we've got Tri-Brigade Shurag, another Tri-Brigade card, but this one will be specifically a little bit better in actual Tri-Brigade and maybe in a deck like Flundereeze. So if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast monster from your deck to your hand whose level is less than or equal to the number of your banished Beast, Beast Warrior, and Wing Beast monsters. So the first target that comes to my mind here that you want to search is DD Crow, and with the meta that we're moving into right now, DD Crow seems like a pretty darn good hand trap. The next card we've got is the Paleozoic Link monster. I don't know how to pronounce this one. Cambro Raster? I don't know. Someone roast me in the comments. I have no idea. If a set card or cards you control will be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card from your field or graveyard instead. And this one specifically is a shout out to all my Monkey Flip players out there. You get to set all of your purple cards and you don't gotta worry about no Harpy's Feather Duster. So one tech card that has been picking up some popularity, you may or may not have heard about it at this point, is Evil Twins Trouble Sunny. So you'll see some people citing a copy of Evil Twins Kiss a Kill and Leela just to get a target for Trouble Sunny's graveyard effect, which reads, you can banish this card from your graveyard and send 1 Evil Twin monster from your hand, deck, or face up field to the graveyard. Send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. So what's cool about this one is that it is non-targeting removal, which is really strong in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, and it could force out a lot of your opponent's cards. Also, the Evil Twin card that you are sending to the graveyard does have a graveyard effect, but that's far less likely to ever come up, so we're not really gonna go over that. That's it for the Link monsters. We're gonna move on to Synchros now. For the first one, we've got Sci-Frame Lord Omega, which while it is in the graveyard, you can target 1 other card in the graveyard, shuffle both that card and this card from the graveyard into the deck. So this can either remove follow-up that your opponent may have in their graveyard, or maybe they have some problematic cards that you just don't want to deal with. So think of like Elvish the Golden Lord and Virtual World Shen Shen. Those are like the first 2 that come to my mind. Maybe they're playing Despia and they send an Albion this turn and you don't want it to get its end phase effect to set a branded spell or trap to the field. That's also an option. So basically, it's pretty versatile in what it can put back, and it's not just a one-way card, right? Like maybe you open one of your combo pieces and you had to discard it to play. That way, now you have Omega to put it back in your deck, and maybe it'll come up in a following turn, or maybe you haven't even committed to your full combo yet, right? So it's a very, very versatile card, and that's why I really like Omega as a potential target. The next card we have is Herald of Arclight. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one ritual monster or one ritual spell from your deck to your hand. So this might be really good in decks like Drytron because they're already playing Herald in their extra deck. And maybe if you're playing a deck that's running Illusion of Chaos so you can get quicker access to Magician Souls, that could also be a pretty cool search target. So yeah, there's that. For the final synchro target, we've got Wind Pegasus Administer. This is a card I've loved ever since it came out. If another card or cards you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect while this card is on the field or in the graveyard, you can banish this card, then target one card your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck. So shuffling cards back can usually be a much better form of removal than, for example, destructive removal, because destructive removal usually triggers graveyard effects, but if the card gets spun back, then you don't have to worry about triggering any graveyard effects, and that's why I really like Wind Pegasus. So moving on to Xyz, unfortunately, there is only really one decent target, and that is totally awesome. I know in a future set we are getting an Xyz monster that's kind of like an infinite impermanence, but for now we're just going to be talking about TCG legal cards. So if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one water monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So what you can do is you can put the Toadback that you sent into your extra deck, and that way your other copies of Ultimate Slayer are still alive and still have a target to send. However, if you're playing a deck like Maritzas, this card just becomes infinitely better because you go from having like no targets to adding back to your hand to having basically your entire core that you can pick from, right? So that's really good. And finally, let's talk about fusion monsters. This is the biggest list in this video, and I think there's some pretty cool choices in here too. Let's start off with the most popular and well-known one, which is Elder Entity Entis. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one card in the field, destroy it. So essentially, Entis turns Slayer into a 2-for-1 trade, which is really, really good. Next, we're gonna move on to Fossil Warrior Skull Knight, which is a little worse than Entis, but it has its own utility. It reads that you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one monster on the field, destroy it. With Entis, you immediately have to have something that you want to target in a new chain link, whereas with Skull Knight, you can be a little bit more patient. Perhaps you know your opponent has some way to summon a monster later on in a turn, or maybe you just want to keep it in the graveyard, right? Maybe you want to grind it out a bit. Maybe you guys are in a simplified game state, and in that sense, Skull Knight becomes a really, really good card. So this one I think a lot of people probably don't know about, and it's actually another fossil monster, and it's called Fossil Machine Skullwagon, and all it is basically is just back row removal. That's all it does. The effect reads, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one spell or trap card on the field, destroy it. That's all it is. Definitely a good one to know about though. So in Power of the Elements, we've actually got a TCG exclusive fusion card that we can use as a target for Ultimate Slayer, and that card's name is Garura Wings of Resonant Light. So first off, this is a great generic super poly target with an effect of when this card is sent to the graveyard, you can draw one card. So essentially, you get to activate Ultimate Slayer for free, and you just get to get a new card in your hand. I think that's pretty sick. The next card we got is App Clone. I know a lot of you guys are probably really familiar with this one with all the times that we've had to put up with El Shaddoll Winda. So with Tier Elements being released in the TCG and people playing around with like some Shaddoll cards, I know people are summoning Falco off of the Hauki Fibrax. Don't know what else people are doing, but perhaps this becomes viable because, as we know, getting any sort of access to Winda is pretty disgusting, and usually the person who controls Winda ends up winning the game rather quickly. So hang in there, we just got two more to go. The next card we've got is Predaplant Chimera Rafflesia, and it has a graveyard effect that says during the next standby phase after it was sent to the graveyard, you can add one polymerization spell or fusion spell from your deck to your hand. So the obvious con here is that you have to wait all the way until your next standby phase, but the pro is the amount of different options that you have to add. So polymerization, fusion destiny, branded fusion, Shaddoll fusion, right? There's a lot you can do here. And speaking of branded, they also have a lot of potential cards they can send from their extra deck to the graveyard, but I've chosen to mention Titanic Glide because it has applicability for decks other than just branded. In the end phase of the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can add to your hand or special summon either one Dogmatica monster or one Fallen Valbaz from your deck. And there's a lot of things you can do here. Perhaps you want the Ecclesia to grab a Fleur from your deck, and that way you have additional follow, or not additional follow, but you have an additional interruption for your opponent's turn. Or maybe you left a monster in your opponent's board, and then you can just fuse it away with the Fallen Valbaz that you've summoned. Alright everyone, that is a wrap for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you enjoy content like this, please make sure to like and subscribe. I'm trying to make one final big push for 5,000 subscribers, and we're almost there. We're so close. So if you can help me out, I'd really appreciate that. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. This is Bear signing off. Peace, guys.